As I look back now in my mind's eye and remember dreaming as a young boy, flying in the skies free as a bird, the realism of the landscape and elements of nature that surrounded every flight often made me question if it was really just a dream. That feeling of soaring like an eagle inspired my creativity. Growing up in a middle class, low income family didn't allow us the luxury of expensive toys or hobbies. Often thoughts of future adventures would far exceed the means or resources and the opportunity to believe those dreams could become a reality. But as the years passed, my creativity would develop and bring me ever closer to a fulfilling and rewarding life to look back on. If given the chance, we all would have made changes or different decisions that may have changed where we are today. I look back with few regrets and much appreciation of my life's choices. Choosing to be a professional artist for the past 36 years has been one of the most fulfilling parts of my life's journey. I've left a legacy of one of a kind pieces of artwork behind that will long surpass my physical existence on this place we call Earth. Little did I know then that passion would be a big part of making those dreams of flying become a reality. Back in the early 80s, my dad earned his pilot's license flying Cessna 152s and 172s out of Burlington, Vermont airport. Here we are preparing for one of those amazing flights. Once in the air, he would let me take the controls. That was my first taste of freedom of the skies outside of my dreams. Those flights made me realize that anything is possible if you believe in yourself. When he got his pilot's license, I created this plaque for my mom to give to him on their anniversary. This piece of art was created before I officially started my professional career as an artist. My gallery, called Artistic Impressions, was on the corner of Pine and Maple Street in Burlington, Vermont from 1992 to 1998. Through the years of creating artwork, my flying was always in the back of my mind in my dreams. Little did I know then that it would be my artwork that would allow me the true feeling of the freedom of the sky and to soar as the eagle in my dreams. It's 2008 and my career as an artist has brought me to Honolulu, Hawaii. The beautiful landscape and tropical weather has created thoughts of a different perspective of the islands from above ground level. One afternoon I decided to travel to the north shore of Oahu and chat with Steve and Susie Lowry of Acroflight International. It's a glider training school and facility at Dillingham Airfield. After expressing to them my desire to be a pilot, they suggested I started with earning my glider pilot certificate, so my journey to fulfill that dream officially began. Steve was the sole instructor and had been teaching for 40 years. The Grob 109B was an acrobatic motor glider they had available for training purposes. It's a German ultralight aircraft with awesome power and maneuverability. Being a biker, race car driver, snowmobiler, and having owned many different vehicles throughout the years, I'm definitely a motor guy. The motor glider was the perfect plane for my character. When it wasn't available, I would alternate from the Schweitzer 332 and the 333 for standard glider training. During those many hours of flying, I met other pilots and got to fly a couple other unique aircraft. This 1967 Grasshopper was a blast to pilot. On one of our cross-island flights, we had some company alongside in this homemade ultralight, and I took this short video clip. Unfortunately, mishaps happen sometimes, and just before I arrived for training one day, this plane had flipped upside down due to braking issues on a wet surface due to the rain. The runway was closed for the day, and we rescheduled training for another day. These incredible photos were taken as we flew a cross-island flight along the north shore looking over the mountain ridge towards Honolulu. We were flying just below the cloud cover and just above the top of the ridgeline. The winds blowing up the ridge from the north made it a perfect but intense power-off flight for a couple mile stretch. Notice the feathered stop prop Early 2013, I completed my training and earned my private glider pilot and motor glider certification and was on my own. Since day one, my pilot's logbook documents all my time and experiences to date. Soon my flying time was reduced to a minimal due to my art business and life in general. It's 2020 and COVID hit us. I decided to return to Vermont to be near my mom because she was alone since the passing of my dad in 2017. So I'm back in Vermont after being gone since 1998 when I left to advance my artist career. Great memories of family and friends and surroundings were a pleasant welcome. Many of my past clients expressed excitement about me being back in town. One morning when I was driving along Bay Road in Colchester, Vermont, an object caught my attention. It was this banana yellow 1986 Delta Bird biplane. It was love at first sight. The view at that moment was brief, but the impression in my mind was permanent. The next time I passed by, it was gone and seemingly unknown of its whereabouts. A few months later, Betty Pepin of Pepin's Memorial called me up and requested I revise the custom clock of their home business I had created for them 30 years ago. After agreeing to do the commission for her, I inquired about the plane that was in their driveway a couple months before. She said it was her husband's and sitting in the backyard in pieces and to talk to him about it. My heart raced with excitement having located it and the possibilities. When I met with her about the clock revision, he was home that day and I asked about that awesome plane he had abandoned. He brought me in the backyard and said he had never flown it and he wasn't sure it would ever fly again. It was a 1986 Delta Bird biplane and had been built in Highgate, Vermont, and many of the pilots in that area had flown it. They retired it over 20 years ago and it hung from the ceiling on display at the airport. After sharing my dream of flying with him, he expressed an interest in having an American flag mural on the roof of his garage, and what would it cost? My reply was one broken airplane as partial payment and cash for the balance. The deal was made. I knew there would be a lot of work ahead of me for both the mural and the restoration of my first airplane, with no guarantees it would fly again. But that was a chance I was willing to take. This project was much more than I anticipated when we first discussed the details. Little did I know the prep and base coat would be a nightmare to complete. After close analysis of the roof, I realized every screw holding down the metal would need replacing due to the rust corrosion from the elements. The fact that it was built with a 30-degree pitch added other complications. I rented a power lift that allowed me to work suspended above the freshly painted surface as I created this patriotic American flag mural. 6 long days in the sun and heat to get to the final details, but the end result was very satisfying to my client. Now it was my turn to resurrect this classic bird from its sleeping retirement. At first glance, it would look hopeless to the average person. Being a creative, thinking outside of the box artist like myself, I could see amazing potential, and the anticipation was a powerful motivation. It looked like 20 years of dust, wind, and all the other Vermont elements had sealed its fate, but that didn't hamper my will to succeed. We pulled the cockpit and engine out first, then the tail section. Then we reassembled her in the backyard, and then we moved her up in front of the garage below the flag mural to start the restoration. What a sight! But it was only going to get even more awesome from there. Being on a busy corner along the lakeshore allowed great viewing of the flag mural and painting of my airplane. I'm so excited. Many people honked as they passed by, and some stopped to take photos while the work was being done. Mother Nature wasn't my friend those next few days as it rained off and on and the wind blew stronger than I would have preferred. Replacing fuel lines and flushing the complete fuel system, including the tank, was my first task. The wheels showed their age, so I ordered replacements on Amazon, but that would prove to be a mistake later on. The suspension was gone, and a couple of straps were tied around the landing gear that had been used to suspend her from the ceiling in years past at the Highgate Airport. I ordered heavy-duty bungee cords and designed my own suspension, and it worked like a charm. After going through the hardware and examining the canvas and feeling sure she was flight-worthy, I turned my focus to the motor performance. That first time pulling the crank was very exciting. 3 pulls and she fired up strong. Music to my ears as the fuel rushed through her veins and she sang with delight. This first of many hours that she would take me to heights and thrills that few ever get to experience in their lifetime. Now that all systems are ago, it's time to bring out her patriotic character. The design I imagined would take about 8 days to complete. Layout and painting by hand was very rewarding to watch it come to life as each day passed. I took a few amazing drone pictures while in the process of the garage and plane mural, together before her departure from her nest and the journey to where I would fly her for the first time. Now she is running great and looks frickin' awesome. Time to plan the 40-mile haul to Highgate Airfield. That day of our cross-country journey, Mr. Pepin and I took her apart, separating the cockpit and tail section, and loaded her on the flatbed. It was strapped down and ready to go. My bird was leaving the nest, never to return. Moving a plane in pieces on an open flatbed on the highway was vulnerable to the winds with all the wing surface this one has. But all went well. As we pulled into the airfield, a car approached us and 2 older gentlemen asked where we were heading and recognized my awesome bird, even with its new paint scheme. Armand Charrier was a pilot and had flown this bird back in its heyday and owned by another pilot and flown out of this very airfield. He invited me to bring it to his hangar down near the ultralight grass runway. I shared my dream of flying my own plane and how this opportunity came about. He took me under his wing and shared knowledge and flying and the mechanics to help prepare me for my first flight. His Kit Fox and Hummel were housed in his hangar, but he gave me space outside to tie mine down and an open access to the hangar and tools. Within 2 hours, we had it unloaded and put back together ready to go. The grass runway is only about 400 feet. My 1986 Delta Bird with a 30-horse Rotex engine had no problem rotating about 75 feet from a dead stop at full power. Being a tail dragger, ground control was very important. My first practice sessions were high-speed taxis and short hops to feel the ground effects on takeoff and landings. I had replaced the old tires with new larger wheels and created my own suspension. Testing these 2 changes proved to be crucial before my first flight. During those practice runs, the wheel hub on the right side failed and broke out, then pulled me off the runway into a small ditch and caused a partial nose over. Fortunately, because of the lower speed and I powered the motor down immediately, no damage was caused. It was one of my first lessons reminding me that every moment is crucial, even on the ground, until the plane is stopped and parked safely. I put the original wheels back on and resumed practice with ground control, taxiing, turning, and short hops. It didn't take long and I was very comfortable with my progress and was ready to set her free. It's hard to imagine sitting strapped in your own airplane that you earned, rebuilt, and now prepared to power up and take off into the wild blue yonder. Yahoo! But here I was, watching the gauges and pushing the throttle for my maiden flight. My heart raced with excitement and adrenaline levels were very high. The engine run-up showed all normal and away I go. Within about 6 seconds and 75 feet or so, I rotated and left the ground. Smooth and steady, the climb out was flawless, still tracking the airfield in case of any mechanical failure. A short pattern run with a positive takeoff and landing was the plan. Turning to base and then final approach was absolutely one of my most exciting life's experience up until that point. There would be many more to follow for me and my Patriot. With no winds blowing from the south, final approach involves clearing an 8-foot fence and dropping in as soon as possible to allow stopping distance in this short grass airfield. A little intimidated by the fence, I came in a little hot, assuring clearance, and it wasn't my smoothest landing, but the first for this bird and I. I was very pleased and knew each one after that would only get better. That first day of flying, I really didn't want to venture too far from the landing field, so stop and go landings were my goal to perfect. Once I got comfortable in the plane's performance on the grass, hitting the paved runway was my next move forward. That day I completed 9 touch and goes on the pavement with no issues. Today, iPhones allow us to take amazing pictures and videos. Many times I attached my phone to the framework of the wing supports to capture somewhat what I was seeing. Those first 45 days I spent practicing and cruising around Highgate, Vermont, close to the Canadian border and Lake Champlain, and it was a wonderful adventure. Within that time frame, I met Barbara McGee, owner and operator of Shelburne Airfield, and I secured a T-hanger for my beautiful bird and I to call our new home. So my next adventure involved planning my cross-country flight from Highgate to Shelburne Airfield. It would take 2 stops for refueling to make this flight safely. My first stop would be a mowed field alongside St. Albans Bay, about 15 miles south of my departure point. My mom would meet me there with fuel and my spare tank I strapped behind my seat. Prior to the first flight, I spent a couple of days making a short runway along the beach on the dried lake bed right behind where I grew up in Burlington, Vermont. The Shelburne Airport was only about 15 miles further to my final destination. So everything was planned out for my first cross-country adventure in my new bird. The day I left, the weather seemed to be cooperating quite well, except that there was a headwind of about 10 knots from the south. Those winds would be a big factor in my first attempt to relocate. About 2 hours is what was calculated to make the journey, but by the time I got to my first refueling stop, I had burned up more time and fuel than anticipated and decided to abort the journey and return to Highgate that day. Shelburne Airfield has no lighting, and the fact I would be searching in the dark by the time I arrived due to the headwinds was a big part of my decision to reschedule. My second attempt went flawless. Sunny skies with no headwind to fight. The first stop was an amazing photo op for my bird on the green field with the Lake Champlain in the background. On my way to my second stop, I pulled out my cell phone and recorded this short clip as I approached Mallett's Bay in Colchester. At this point, I was about 5 miles from my second stop at the mouth of the Winooski River to my homemade lake bed runway. Coming across the river about 200 feet, just over the top of the trees to land on my 100-foot lake bed runway was an amazing experience. I had reached my second fueling stop flawlessly again. My neighbor Tor had heard me come in and was standing on the shoreline to greet me. So far it was a perfect day and everything went as planned. After refueling my beautiful bird, we shot the crap for a few minutes and was ready to head out on my final leg. Tor videoed my takeoff as I headed to my final destination in Shelburne. As I crossed Shelburne Bay, the 3,000-foot grass runway became visible a mile or so in from the shoreline. I circled the airfield in pattern altitude to clear myself for landing. This plane has no transponder or radio communications and is all VFR operation. Shelburne is a non-towered airfield. The previous month, I had met the owner and operator Barbara McGee. Her and her husband had run the airfield since 1962. He had passed a few years ago, but she continued to keep the airport open. I rented a T-hanger to put my Delta bird in when she wasn't being flown. It was a safe haven during the winter storage months also. Barbara is a wonderful lady, and I respect all the hard work she has to keep the airfield open and available for the public and private use. That first day after my initial arrival, I completed a few pattern runs and touch and goes to acquaint myself with the layout and surroundings of my bird's new home. Good planning had made my first cross-country flight and relocation a big success. At this time, my total time in the cockpit of my first airplane was about 7.5 hours, but that would soon change. The view from the skies in this area is breathtaking to say the least. All the years living in Vermont, I never realized how interesting and beautiful the lake and shoreline were. Now I had a bird's eye view and couldn't get enough of it. Many times I attached my iPhone or GoPro camera to the framework of the wing of the plane and videoed parts of my flights. It's fall in Vermont, and the leaves in the trees have bright yellow, orange, and reds that reflect the sunshine. This is a big contrast from the summer greens that blanket the Vermont wilderness. After a month or so of flying within a few miles of the airfield, I decided to plan my next adventure to follow the lakeshore down about 17 miles to Basin Harbor Airfield, where a 5,000-foot runway rests alongside a rustic restaurant. Many planes fly in and out for lunch, weather permitting. This was my first time attempting to find it from the air. As I started out that day, my focus was on a point ahead I believed to be the harbor. After about 40 minutes, I still didn't have the runway in sight, but was sure it should have appeared by now. Another few minutes passed, and I decided maybe I missed it. My flight path was about a mile in from the lakeshore, and it's very possible the tree line hid the runway from my view. I found a small field behind a local farm and brought her down to ask directions. The farmer and his wife were thrilled to have their first plane land on the farm. When I asked him where Basin Harbor was, he chuckled and said it was back north about 22 miles. I thanked him for their kindness and refueled her from the reservoir tank strapped behind the cockpit and was back in the air backtracking my path north, but this time closer to the lakeshore to not overfly the field again. It was a great day for flying, and the harbor airport was busy, being used by a couple of out-of-state residences. My bird landing there drew some attention, and soon a handful of people were around us admiring my Patriot. After an hour or so, I strapped myself in and was ready to head back north. She seemed to be running a little rough while idling, and I thought maybe just an adjustment was needed. As I taxied out, she seemed fine, so I lined her up for takeoff. The wind direction was to the north, which required a takeoff into the wind to the south and a 180-degree turn to downwind to head home. Just after passing the tree line at the beginning of the runway and only about 150 feet altitude and level flight heading home, the engine abruptly quit. My reflexes reacted with nose down and a 60-degree left bank towards the just passed approach, which allowed me to turn 180 back to clear the trees by about 20 feet and dead stick land on the grass safely. A group of guys had been videoing my departure and stopped filming a second before my engine failure. Wide-eyed and amazed, they approached my bird and said, "Wow, you just dead stick landed that like a pro." I said I really didn't have much of a choice and was thankful for all the glider pilot experience I had over the past 14 years. Now to solve the mechanical issue. She gave me pre-warning by running rough before takeoff, and I chose to overlook it. Thankfully, again, due to my flight training and mindset to be ready for the unexpected, kept me from disaster that day. After about 4 hours of troubleshooting the complete fuel system with no positive conclusion, I turned my attention to the electrical system. Within a very short time, I found the cause of engine failure. One of the connecting wires to the spark plug relay had come loose. By the looks of it, the wire had been broken loose from its solder point for a while and was being held in place by the caulking around the connection. Apparently, this loss of power could have happened at almost any point during the past couple months of flying her. Someone was looking out for us that day, because a few seconds later or a few yards farther and I wouldn't have been able to return safely. The maintenance guy, Brian, at the Basin Harbor Airport, lent me his soldering tools, and I repaired the broken connection. After that, she ran like a charm, and I was headed home again. At the end of the day, I had overcome my first aviation emergency and accomplished my first dead stick landing in my new bird. Hopefully, my last involuntarily. This kind of experience enhances your awareness of how vulnerable we are to life changing moments that can happen in a blink of an eye. Take nothing for granted and appreciate every waking moment. Each flight out of Shelburne Airport presented breathtaking views and adrenaline rushes from start to finish. Surprisingly, air traffic in this area while I was there was minimal. One of the neighbors to the airport had his plane tied down near my hangar, and he would come over and say hello when I showed up to fly. He let me fly his Cessna around for a while one day. Jim videoed me doing these pattern flights so I could analyze my technique from a different perspective in my bird. He would take his wife and two little daughters to New Hampshire a couple times a month for lunch dates. For me, each day going through the procedures and preparation and flight, then putting her back to rest would keep my mind content, but made the nights seem longer than usual. Many times the weather in the mornings would be iffy, but then would clear up in the afternoon, making it perfect for early evening flights. This one particular day, I decided to head south towards Mount Philo, a popular hiking destination for locals and tourists. The sun was shining and very little wind. I mounted my phone to the upper left wing support and was ready to cruise. A 5-mile flight yielded amazing views of the mountains on both sides of Lake Champlain. As I circled around the backside, tourists at the summit lookout photoed and videoed my Patriot soaring past them. A couple times around and I headed home. My second attempt to fly around Mount Philo didn't go quite so uneventful. Everything appeared normal that day when I took off into the wind south towards my destination. About a mile or so into the flight, as I looked down, checking my gauges, my eyes caught the unexpected disaster unfolding in front of me. The diamond plate bracket mounted to the back of my instrument panel that housed the relay for the spark plug wires had snapped in half and was dangling loosely by the wires. Without hesitation, I banked her to the right and did a 180-degree heading back. I have to admit, I probably held my breath most of the way until I landed safely on the grass runway I departed from shortly before. After regrouping, I removed the plate and brought it to the Giro's machine shop in Heinsberg and had them weld the plate back together. After mounting it back in position, I test ran the engine for a while to make sure all was working right and it was holding up to the vibration. I felt sure all was okay and took her back up, staying within a mile or so from the airfield in case of any issues. Sure enough, 10 minutes into flying, it snapped again in a different spot from where it was welded. I could hardly believe it myself. Again, dangling in the wind, I brought her back safely and parked outside my hangar. The day was only half over, and I had had 2 mechanical issues already. Certainly it was time to thank whatever angel was riding with me that day. A few deep breaths, and I took it apart again and headed back to the machine shop. This time I had them create a new heavy-duty 1/4-inch thick plate that would last another 20 years. It's been a long day, but after putting it back together, I decided to take another test run. After flying around close to the airfield for about 10 minutes and focusing on the new panel, I had started descending to reach pattern altitude when suddenly the engine coughed and shut down. Immediately, I nosed down and banked her to the right, heading towards the runway. I looked up above my head and saw the fuel gauge was reflecting the fuel exhaustion that just occurred. A perfect way to end a very eventful day with a dead stick landing. My second one in this beautiful bird. A nice, slow, soft touchdown about 2/3 of the way down the runway. So not to obstruct any other possible traffic, I quickly got out and pushed her to the far end to the exit. Time to call it a day and put her away. A couple very valuable lessons reminding me of how not to allow any distractions deter a thorough checklist before each flight. For sure, that will never happen again to me. Again, I'm thankful for the many hours and experience as a glider pilot, which proved very valuable in an emergency situation for the second time. That last flight was captured with my phone mounted to the left wing support. Many of the photos and videos taken were with my phone in my left hand and flying with the stick in my right hand. Fall in Vermont is spectacular with the color changing of the leaves. Being able to view it as a bird flies is breathtaking. This next flight, I took off to the west towards Shelburne Farms and the Lake Champlain shoreline. At about 300-foot altitude, I passed over fields and the treetops to reach the beautiful shoreline. Stall speed on this awesome bird is about 25 miles per hour, which makes low and slow really cool, following along the inlets and rocky beaches the lake has to offer. The calmness of the water surface allowed picture-perfect reflections of the sky and mountains in the distance. Circling the island in different points protruding from the shore was so much fun. Many times I wished it was a two-seater bird so I could share this thrill with family and friends. Speaking of two-seaters, Tom was another pilot I met through a friend, and he let me fly his RV-8, fast and sleek. What a blast to fly at 250 miles per hour compared to my cruise speed at 50 miles per hour. His plane was hangared next to mine at Shelburne Airfield. My time storing and flying my 1986 Delta Bird biplane out of this 3,000-foot grass airfield was nothing less than spectacular. The owner and operator, Barbara, did a wonderful job of keeping the grass mowed and always had a smile on her face to greet me each time I arrived to fly. Her husband had passed a few years ago, and she still had a couple of his planes in the hangar. She gave me access to his tools whenever I needed something. Her mechanic was there every Thursday and shared some of his knowledge graciously. I couldn't have had a better place to start my first plane ownership experience than Highgate and Shelburne airports. I could hardly wait each day to arrive and start prepping her to fly again. And of course, the first part of each flight checklist was filling the fuel tank. Storing her in the T-hangar with an open front required me to cover it from the elements and the local cats that like to climb in the pilot's seat and sleep. Large tarps with lots of rope did the job just fine. During the winter, she was wrapped up tight and tied down very secure. Vermont isn't the ideal place to fly any open cockpit bird during the winter months. I flew up until October 29th in 2022. As you can see, I bundled up to endure the cold air. Still, awesome flying with the sun shining and the fall colors in the trees. I certainly prefer the warm weather. That's why I left Vermont in 1998 and headed west to Vegas, and then ended up in Hawaii in 2008. No doubt, Vermont has its seasons that are beautiful weather and amazing scenery, but winter is no picnic. So I put 38 hours in the seat of this beautiful 1986 Delta Bird biplane, and it's time to store her away for another long winter in Vermont. I hate to leave, but Hawaii is calling. I made the heartbreaking decision to sell her because living so far away and only having a short time to fly when I make the cross-country flight to Vermont didn't seem practical to keep her hangared and idle for so long. I posted an ad on a few aviation sites and got quite a response. A young pilot named Matt in California contacted me and said he had been admiring my post and was excited to see she was now available for a new home. I didn't want to let her go to just anybody. After about 2 hours on the phone, I knew she would be much appreciated and well taken care of, so we made a deal. He assured me I could come to California and fly her in the near future. He flew from the West Coast to Massachusetts and purchased a school bus, then drove to Shelburne, Vermont to haul her back to California. I would teach him how to fly her, and then we would take her apart and put her in the bus for the long adventure back west to his home. His training session went pretty well, with us practicing some taxiing and short hops on the grass runway. Next step was to disassemble her piece by piece, and we wrapped all the vulnerable parts for traveling. With a heavy heart, I said goodbye to my empty tea hanger and watched Matt drive off with my lost love and his new beautiful bird on its new adventure. So it's been a year or so since I left Vermont, and a couple of years since I painted this American flag mural that earned my Patriot. I made a trip back to create custom art for my clients, and while there, Mr. Pepin requested I touch up his garage mural I earned my plane from. I was almost done when the unexpected happened. The equipment I was using to elevate me and my ladder malfunctioned, and I fell 10 feet off the roof and landed sideways on the top of a tractor frame and broke 7 ribs and punctured a lung. I spent 4 days in the ICU. The 5th day, I was back on the roof and finished the job I committed to in much pain. This brought me back full circle to prove that in reality, I couldn't fly like an eagle, only in my dreams. But the experience I had, while together with this awesome bird, let me feel ever so close to those dreams, and I'll cherish them forever. Just landed from flying, maybe my last time in my beautiful Delta bird before I let her go and head back to Hawaii. It's been an awesome adventure. I absolutely love this girl here. She's been really good to me, and I put 32 hours, almost 33 hours in her, flying around Shelburne Airport and Basin Harbor and Highgate Airport and along Lake Champlain, and it's just been incredible. The view's awesome. The weather's been relatively good. It's a little smoky today from all the stuff coming in from Canada, but it was still nice up there, and I absolutely loved it. And now I'm gonna put her away and get her ready to be packed up for a little while. Now,
showing off the camera there. But that's awesome. Nice work, Shappy.
So I just got down from flying this awesome bird. Gusting winds up there, which makes it more interesting for me. It's running great. Everything's ready to go. Just waiting for Matt to get here sometime later on Monday, and I'll teach him how to fly it, and then we'll take her apart and put her in a bus, and he's gonna haul it cross country to California, and I'm going to head back on the morning of the Thursday the 7th back to Hawaii. And someday soon in the near future, I'll make a trip over to California when he gets it over there and gets her together and gets her all ready to go, and I'll be able to fly her over on the West Coast for a little while. That'll be really cool. I'm looking forward to it. Matt's got a great adventure ahead of him. It's really sad to let her go, but you know, I put 39 hours on her so far, you know, since I had it, and it's just awesome. And I hope you guys have enjoyed the videos that I put out. I'm going to post the one I just made of my phone taped to the outer wing of the plane here for this last flight, which is about 20 minutes or so. So enjoy, and thank you for coming along with the ride, and aloha and happy trails. Peace. Experienced, written, and produced by Robert Emerald Shappy.